Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, I thought that I would talk about this trilogy that ended up happening yesterday between Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. And this was going to be a very interesting fight because whoever was the winner of this fight more than likely was probably going to face Charles Oliveira, who right now is the UFC lightweight champion, who really, once upon a time, nobody expected. Let me tell you something, man. There is just uh, and this is another part of the reason why I also like to watch UFC with boxing. Boxing, if you've watched it at least for years upon years, usually when someone loses, especially during these days, especially kind of during and after the Floyd Mayweather Jr. era, where I think since Floyd was so great because of his undefeated record, that so many fighters now actually rely on their marketability overall because of their undefeated record in boxing. I think he did a lot of great things for boxing, but actually because of how great he was, I actually think he somewhat negatively affected the sport of boxing because now when a fighter loses, I think even more today, when they even suffer one loss, their marketability goes way down compared to what it would have been, say, 20 years ago when it comes down to it, or 30 years ago when it comes down to it. But maybe that's just my opinion when it comes down to it. Anyways, boxing is a very harsh reality sport. I guess the fight game, really all sports you can say are very harsh reality when it comes down to it. But the fight game especially. I mean, one day you can be on top of the world, and then the next day, you come crashing down. And Conor McGregor, the story of Conor McGregor, he was once a very bright, star in the UFC. He actually, once upon a time, was the biggest star that the whole entire UFC had ever seen. And he was an all time great fighter. You have to rank Conor McGregor objectively because Conor McGregor has one or two people when it comes to opinions on him. You have major fanboys, that are infatuated with him, and you have people overall that completely hate his guts. And I understand why, but it is what it is. Bottom line is this: if we take a look at this objectively and logically, Conor McGregor is one of the all-time great UFC fighters. I don't think that there's any debate about that. I know a certain amount of people, they always like to jab at Conor because he doesn't have any title defenses or anything like that, blah, 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 blah. That's just an excuse to me. I mean, Conor McGregor obviously is an all-time great fighter. You can't have the resume that he had, at least when he was at his peak and defeated the fighters that he defeated, and not be an all-time great fighter. You're talking about a guy that ended up defeating Chad Mendes, Jose Aldo, when he was at his absolute peak, and he ended up really defeating the best version of him. You're talking about a guy that defeated Eddie Alvarez when he was champion, a guy that defeated Nate Diaz. You're talking about a guy that also did defeat Dustin Poirier. Although I will say this, Dustin Poirier was not at his peak when Conor McGregor faced him. He also faced Max Holloway and beat him, but let me also say this, Max Holloway also was not at his peak when Conor McGregor faced him. Bottom line is this, though. Conor McGregor has faced great enough fighters overall for us to know how great of a fighter that he actually was. He became a two-weight division champion, and you don't just become a two-weight division champion because you're just some ordinary fighter. Conor McGregor is one of the all-time great UFC fighters, but unfortunately, I think when I take a look at Conor McGregor, his career is going to be another one of those ones where I'm like, man, what could have been? I think Conor McGregor is going to be one of those what could have been careers when you take a look at it, and there's certain all-time great athletes that I take a look at overall, and I ask the question, what could have been? When we take a look at Shaquille O'Neal, a certain amount of people believe that he did not take care of himself enough physically, and that he could have won more championships, and that he could have been the all-time leader in points and a certain amount of other things. A lot of people, even though for how accomplished Shaquille O'Neal is in the NBA's history, a lot of people look at him and say, what if? Now, in my opinion, he's a top 10 player of all time. But a lot of people take a look at Shaq and say, what if? Bottom line is this, and if you watch boxing, the what if, person of that, and there's different levels to it. Adrian Broner is probably the biggest what if to a lot of people. He's not really a big what if to me because I don't think Adrian Broner was really ever an A-class skilled fighter. I don't think he ever had the skill set for it. I think that's a big part of the reason why he loses all his big fights. Conor McGregor, I think that it's a very unfortunate end for him. But once upon a time, he was a very bright, burning star. And his star burned so bright that it got to the point where he started burning out. And that's really where we are at this point in time with Conor McGregor. I don't really like, to see people go out like this, but I don't see Conor McGregor going out any other way. Conor McGregor is now a burnout, and I think overall that there is no question about that. He is nowhere near the same fighter that he used to be, and a certain amount of people, they'll disagree with that when it comes down to it. I'm going to say this, man, and a certain amount of people may disagree. Of course, the leg break ended up happening. I'm just gonna say this. Maybe there will be a fourth fight later on down the line. I don't think it's gonna matter, and then a certain amount of people may disagree. I think had this been the Conor McGregor that fought Eddie Alvarez, and had this been the Conor that fought Nate Diaz in the rematch, I think that we very well could have seen Conor McGregor get the victory. This is the same Conor that I seen fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. This is the same Conor that I seen fight Cowboy Cerrone. And although Conor McGregor is a good fighter, he's a good fighter when it comes down to it overall, in that version. But he's not great. This Conor McGregor is not going to win a title. This Conor McGregor is not going to beat any of the elite fighters. There was nothing. And a certain amount of people overall may disagree. Of course, if you're a Conor supporter or, if you're looking at things on the positive side of things, you're going to say, well, Conor was doing some very great things in the beginning of the fight. Well, he was landing a lot of leg kicks. And if we're being real about it, Dustin Poirier, he's not really known for checking and blocking a lot of leg kicks. I mean, he pretty much eats up leg kicks. It is what it is. But when it comes down to it overall, I could tell that Conor McGregor, when I looked at him in the press conference, when I looked at him on the way out to the fight, Conor McGregor did not look confident in his self whatsoever. And a certain amount of people overall may disagree. I can usually tell when someone is confident and when someone is not. Conor McGregor was not confident that he was going to win this fight. And that's the bottom line. And I can tell you that he wasn't overly confident in winning this fight because he tried to get Dustin Poirier out of there super duper early when it comes down to it. Sometimes when a fighter is stressed, they'll do one of two things. They may sit back a little bit too long and they don't throw anything at all, or they go balls to the wall immediately and they try to knock their opponent out and get them out of there in the first round. That's exactly what Conor McGregor did, and the reason why he did that is because he knew that if the fight was going to go longer probably than the first couple of rounds, that Dustin Poirier probably was going to knock him out. Because Conor McGregor felt the type of power that Dustin Poirier had in that second fight, and he didn't like it. On top of that, there's just so much that has really changed about Conor McGregor, in my opinion. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Conor McGregor is just nowhere near the same fighter that I think that he once used to be when it comes down to it. I remember when Conor McGregor fought Eddie Alvarez and Nate Diaz in the rematch. That might be the best version that I've seen of Conor McGregor. The best version that I've probably ever seen of Conor McGregor was him versus Eddie Alvarez in that match. That was the best version that I've ever seen of Conor McGregor. And I remember watching his strikes, and I remember watching him feint, with the punches, and him kind of step back, and him being so accurate with his strikes. Now, there are a certain amount of faults maybe that you can say Conor McGregor has, that maybe he has his chin a little bit too high up in the air when it comes down to it, and maybe he doesn't always have a great defense when people get on the inside. But Conor McGregor usually protected himself a little bit better than what he does now. And this Conor McGregor was just completely lost once Dustin Poirier was able to get on the inside, where before I think that he was able to move around the punches very decently well, and he had confidence in his counter-punching ability. This Conor McGregor had no confidence in his counter-punching ability whatsoever, and that's why he was trying to press the attack so early. And he was, really forcing left hands out there that really should have not been thrown. And Dustin Poirier, he was able to counter him early. He actually was able to hurt Conor McGregor with a punch. So, certain people overall would say that Conor McGregor was doing good up until, Dustin Poirier got him on the ground. I don't even think Conor McGregor was doing that good even before the ground and pound. And that's my opinion. And on top of that, his grappling looked even worse in this match than what it did in prior fights. Conor McGregor, after the Nate Diaz first fight, Conor McGregor looked like he worked on certain things after that Nate Diaz rematch. And it looked like his grappling, certainly his takedown defense, got a little bit better. Now, obviously, I don't think that he would have ever beat like a Khabib Nurmagomedov or anything like that because his grappling is on another level. But I think that had this been a Conor from the Eddie Alvarez fight, I think overall that he probably would have been able to stop Dustin. I mean, I do understand that Dustin Poirier, that he is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is no joke on the ground. There's no doubt about that. But Dustin Poirier is not usually someone that, he's not usually someone that I usually picture taking you to the ground and just beating the crap out of you. Even when it does come to Conor McGregor, I don't think Conor McGregor's grappling really has ever been as bad, at least when he's at his best. I don't think his grappling usually actually was ever as bad as many people tried to say that it was. But Conor McGregor, in almost every category, he just looks, at least compared to his old self, he just looks subpar. And I remember the Nate Diaz rematch so clearly. And now Nate Diaz is a very, sloppy thrower. a lot of MMA people, they love to say that the Diaz brothers are very good boxers. They're really not that good of boxers when it comes down to it. They're very sloppy. They exaggerate a lot of their punches when it comes down to it. But the thing is that Nate Diaz, he does have very long arms. And he even had longer arms than Conor McGregor, and he's a little bit bigger than him naturally when it comes down to it. So Conor McGregor had to be very calculated. He had to be very careful. So he had to feint. Overall, he had to use his slickness. He had to move around the punches in order to get past Nate Diaz's punches, to get around his guard, and to be accurate. I thought that was one of the best performances that Conor McGregor ever put on, because his striking was so on point. His striking was so off in this fight when it came down to. Now, when it comes to the ankle break, I'm not sure exactly what happened. Certain people overall say that Dustin Poirier checked the kick. I'm not even sure if he checked the kick. I don't know exactly what the hell happened. I know that something had to have happened to it before then, because there's no way a leg just gives out like that when you just step on it that way. I mean, I've even stepped on my foot that way before overall, and it didn't just give out on me like that, because I didn't suffer any prior injury to it. I don't know if it was something that was suffered in training. I don't know if he kicked Dustin Poirier's knee on accident, because he looked like he was kind of going after the knees. I don't know what the hell happened when it came down to it, but to me it doesn't really matter at this point. First of all, I've never seen anyone, I don't care what level you are when it comes down to it, I've never seen anyone recover very well from an injury like that when it comes down to it. And Conor McGregor, not only is he going to have a lack of confidence now possibly in that leg, he just has no confidence in his striking. He has no confidence in it. He has no confidence in his counter-punching ability. He has no confidence in his defense. He has no confidence in his ability to, set up, people with certain counter-punches, or set up people with that left-hand shot. And that left-hand shot, it still may have power, but it has nowhere near the same amount of power that it once did, because the timing and the speed is not there. It's not there. He can't land the precise punch like he used to be able to do. He doesn't have it anymore. And unfortunately, that's kind of the thing with Conor McGregor right now. He's done. He's never going to be at the elite level ever again. I was not impressed with him at all yesterday. I thought, to be honest with you, I thought he looked horrible. I thought Conor McGregor looked absolutely awful. The only positive thing I can say about Conor McGregor yesterday was that he was landing leg kicks early. That's the only thing positive that I can say about Conor McGregor's performance yesterday. There is nothing else that he looked good in. He was getting out-countered by Dustin Poirier in certain points when it came down to it. And as soon as Dustin Poirier took him down to the ground, he had no answers whatsoever when it came down to it. None. He had no answers whatsoever. This Conor McGregor, I think that he tried to trash talk a little bit at this press conference. I think overall that he tried to get a little bit of heat that once upon a time that he had. He's a burnout right now overall. He's basically a cigarette overall that's trying to light itself when it comes down to it. But, he's at the filter. He doesn't have any more tobacco in that cigarette when it comes down to it. He's at the filter. And that's the problem. Conor McGregor is at the filter point in his career. There's no more tobacco to burn on that cigarette. At least when it comes, to the good part, when it comes down to it, when that there's no good points really left in Conor McGregor's career. Can he win against some of these bottom guys? Sure, but he's not going to beat the elite guys. He's not going to beat the elite guys. If him and Max Holloway fought right now, Max Holloway would beat the shit out of him. If him and Dustin Poirier fought in the fourth fight, Dustin Poirier would beat the hell out of him. If him and Justin Gaethje fought right now, Justin Gaethje beat the hell out of him. There's no one elite that I can take a look at right now and say, wow, Conor McGregor would really have a chance against that guy. There's nobody out there. And that's just the way that I look at it. Some people may disagree. This is not the same Conor McGregor that I seen when he fought Eddie Alvarez. This is not the same Conor McGregor that I seen when he fought Nate Diaz in the rematch. I think Conor McGregor is still going to go down as one of the all-time great UFC fighters when it comes down to it. But Conor McGregor is probably going to be remembered as one of the top 30 UFC fighters of all time, maybe top 20. He could have been probably one of the top 10 UFC fighters of all time if he had continued his career and not fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. I don't think he's ever been the same ever since he fought Floyd Mayweather Jr. That's my personal opinion. Ever since that I seen him fight Floyd Mayweather Jr., I've never seen his striking. I've never seen anything of the old Conor McGregor. Never seen it ever again. Never seen it ever again. And that's why, in my opinion, it's not a good idea for these MMA fighters, especially to go into a boxing ring with these boxers. It's not a good idea. And I think the same thing with boxers going into the MMA fight. But it is what it is. But they want the money. They maybe want to accomplish things in our sports. That's up to them. All right, now the YouTubers, that's a little bit different when it comes down to it. Because, I don't think that's necessarily bad for boxing. And, they're fighting guys overall that maybe would have an even chance against them, when it comes down to it, because they're not really fighting all the time professionals. So it is what it is. But like I said, Conor McGregor, man, at this point in time, he's a burnout. And I don't see him winning any more elite fights at this point in time in his career. And I would not be surprised if he retired completely from the sport. I wouldn't be surprised if he came back, but I don't see him beating anyone elite. That's just my personal opinion. We'll see what happens. That's really about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys thought on the fight, and I'll talk to you all later.